got into photography quite late in life, in my early 30s, 32, 33 years old. I was a musician beforehand up in London. I was a session player, playing bass guitar on people's records, a hired gun. And I had no interest in photography. But the band I was playing in, they were doing quite well at the time. We had a #1 record. And with the money, I bought myself a really nice camera. And I remember looking through the viewfinder on this camera, and this box, this really sharp picture came out looking through it, and this box, and I thought, wow, this is amazing. The world looks amazing looking through this camera. And that's when I thought, this is what I want to do next. I'm going to be a photographer. That's when I started doing it. But I knew I had to make up for time. So as soon as I got this camera, 32 years old, I went and did an evening course, City and Guilds, and then later on did a national diploma in Bournemouth College, and then went to Brighton to do my degree for 3 years. So I really got into the whole studying side of it. Wow. and learned a lot.
And yes. You lectured as well for a time.
I did, that's correct. Yes, that was later on in my photography career. I lectured at USW, University of South Wales, which is a really renowned university for photography. They had a fantastic documentary course there, one of the first ones in the country, set up by David Hearn, and they were in Newport, or Killeen, just outside Newport. And they were setting up they wanted to set up a fashion and advertising BA. And so one of my colleagues, a friend of mine, was a lecturer there already, and he recommended they approach me. I was working up in London at the time, but I was looking for something new to do. So that's how. So I sort of gone from the beginning to the end of my career in one loop there. But yeah, that's how that happened.
What do you think branding means to the average business out there?
The idea of a brand is been around for big businesses, Nike, Apple, Mac, people like that. But the notion of a personal brand, I'm saying, is quite modern. I think it's quite recent. So I think, I obviously would say this, but arguably I would say photography is good for branding in that it carries, people are attached to it. It's got a lot of meaning to it. It's also, in this day where we haven't got a lot of time and things happen very quickly, you can get over a lot of information very quickly with a photograph. And what I aim to do in my clients is really make it that you can look at just one photograph of that client, and within 1 second you can understand what kind of the values of that business, what they do, who their market is, who they appeal to. And I believe you can do that in one photograph and get that information across really quickly. So I think that's the true value of photography. People are connected to it, and you can get information across quickly.
And there's emotion.
Exactly, emotion to it.
Because
exactly.
When we look at our own photographs, our family photographs, or even photographs of strangers, and you see something and it conveys something, and you've got to have a special eye for that, I think. Which photographers do you admire?
Wow, okay, there's a lot out there, isn't there? There's a lot of photographers out there. I mean, my background's fashion, so I'm definitely leaning towards the more fashion photographers. Richard Avedon comes to mind. Annie Leibovitz, of course, people know, but she's not so much fashion, more of a portrait photographer. I mean, there's a lot, and ones who are really probably not very well known at all. I mean, I think we were talking about Vivian Mayer, weren't we, a little while back?
Yeah, that's a great documentary.
Yeah, and nobody knew who she was until that documentary came out. She was just a regular person, and now she's got amazing kudos for what she does. So who knows what's out there? But yeah, fashion photography is where my leaning is. I like images that look sharp, colourful, and look good in print.
Yeah.
Here's the thing, with branding photography, when I work with my clients, I go with them with a tool of different looks. It can be dark and moody, it can be bright and cheerful, and I know how to do that with lighting and designing the set. I work with a team of people, and that's why I bring that aesthetic of fashion photography into my work, and I'm really into the clothes my clients wear and the way they look.
What sort of people do you particularly like working with? Fashionable people, stylish people, quiet people?
I work a lot with coaches and motivational speakers. That's one of the niches that I work in with my solopreneurs. The bigger companies I work with, they've got marketing departments. Their brands are much more established, and it's a different way of approaching them. But for the solopreneurs, what I found, if people don't like being photographed, that is a bottom line, really. Even if they are fashion conscious or stylish, they don't generally like being photographed. What I'm good at is making people feel at ease. That's what people tell me.
Yeah.
So yeah.
But I suppose somebody that's an extrovert, maybe a speaker from the stage, or somebody that coaches, so they're used to an audience.
Yes.
They're probably a little bit more extrovert, egotistical, and are quite happy to have a camera trained on them. There's a lot of photographers about, and there's a lot of would-be photographers, because nowadays with a smartphone, everybody's suddenly a photographer. And I think that I think that's a good thing, because it gets people appreciating the camera and images, etc.
Exactly right, Paul.
When it comes to paying for photography,
yeah.
what skill set do you think it's important to have as a professional photographer?
When I work with my clients, I'm with them for about 3 hours for my branding clients. And I work with assistants, so we can get lots of lighting setups done, so they end up with lots of images at the end as well. Maybe from a shoot, it might be 50 or 60 images that they can use. Yeah.
Well, I worked alongside you as an observer, as your what is it, a grip? Is that what they call it? Get a grip. And I've been very impressed with not only your imagination, you're looking at things that most people wouldn't notice in terms of backdrop, etc., and angles.
Yeah.
But also the speed in which you work at. I'm staggered.
The most important part, the biggest skill you can have as a photographer is coming up with ideas. And it's the hardest thing, really, is to come up with ideas. And people say, how do you get ideas?
Isn't that where your experience comes in? Because you've done so many photo shoots.
Yeah. Yes, exactly.
And you just see things that other people don't see.
Exactly right, Paul. But it's not just because it takes a long time. Let's not say, just because you're old, you're going to have more ideas. No. But certainly it's being aware of the world, looking at things, looking at movies, looking at magazines, obviously, going to exhibitions, obviously, but just being open to gathering information and gathering ideas. Yeah, that's a big thing for me, I think. My tagline is I create aspirational photography for inspirational people. I think people, there's a lot of space out there for taking pictures with your cell phones, that casual approach, but there's also, I believe, space for creating images, an image bank of photographs that make you look aspirational.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I think looking more polished, I think, that's what I bring to the table, making people look more polished. And I think you've got to that takes a little bit of skill, and I think you've got to, if you're a coach or a motivational speaker, you've got to get the right people working with you who understand your vision. Yeah.
That's not dissimilar to a musician, is it? And
That's
I
right,
found
exactly.
that I like watching concerts on, say, YouTube, etc. And I think the different angles that people show bring that performance alive, even though it's mainly music, even though it's mainly speech.
Yeah.
It's the different angles that can, bring that alive.
Yes, definitely. And the different emotions as well that you can capture with a camera. It always amazes me how I can just spend half an hour photographing somebody and every frame is completely different. So yeah, and also the skill in trying to work out what is the right image for that person, which is the right brand for that person. And that's maybe why I'm drawn to working with speakers and coaches, is because I've got the teaching side to me and I've got the stage side to me. So it's a bit empathic to that. Yeah.
Somebody telephones you and they decide they want to make an impression into the market for whatever they're doing. So they're considering a brand photo shoot. How do you prepare, and then how should they prepare? So first of all, how should they prepare?
Sometimes the clients come in with no idea. They think a branding shoot will just be a headshot, which obviously people now know that's become really popular as a way of promoting your brand, the profile photograph. They think that's all it is. So in some ways I have to go through with them and find what they really need, or how you can expand on that or build up a library of images. And then at the other end of the scale, I'm working with large multi-million-pound companies who've got marketing departments and they totally got brand documents, so they know exactly what they want. And I'm working to a very tight brief. So it does vary. how clients come to me. But the way it basically works is, and the way I like to work with a new client when I'm onboarding them, is have just a Zoom call first of all. It's great to see people face to face because you can really, it helps me visualize them. You could go through their wardrobe over Zoom and stuff like that. And then finding out a little bit about their personality, what interests they have, opening it up, find out what the values of the company are, the business, so I can start building it together in my head, images that will show their personality as well and their authenticity as well as what they do in their business, if that's what makes sense. So yeah, it's a deep dive into them, their business and themselves. If it's on location, I'll go and visit the location, look at the light, work out how we're going to, the different rooms, the different setups we can do. If it's in the studio here, it's a bit more straightforward. Yeah, and I obviously go and look at what their existing media is, their websites, their Instagram, their LinkedIn, and work out how I can build up on that and make it better.
Your mother and your father, who influenced you the most?
Okay. It's going to be my mother. My mother was definitely the creative side of my parents. I didn't know my mother too well. She passed when I was quite young, but she played Hammond organ, really? So definitely the music would come from there. Yeah. My dad, being Pakistani, came from a very different culture, and I'm not probably we do turn into our dads, don't we, as we get older? There's no denying that. And I can start to see more of myself in my dad, or more my dad in me rather. But to answer your question, simply my mum, yeah.
What was your favourite subject at school?
Art, surprisingly. Definitely art, yeah.
What was your subject you hated?
Oh, okay. Well, can you believe it? Well, I'll tell you what that is, Latin.
Latin?
Latin.
Oh, you went to a posh school then?
God. I went to a boys' grammar school, and it was so old and defunct, they still taught Latin there. No, yeah. I sing in a choir, and we got Christmas carols coming up, and we are doing one of the carols in Latin. And it's really quite a nice language, isn't it, Latin? It's quite interesting, isn't it?
Yeah.
Maybe I should have paid more attention.
Are you a reader or a watcher?
Oh, yes.
Or a listener?
Oh gosh, all three. I do like watching TV, documentaries. I love a documentary. I do like reading books, but they are non-fiction books.
What was your favourite toy?
Yes, okay, well, suddenly came on my mind was Action Man, so it must have been the Action Man.
You're much younger than me.
Only a little bit younger. When did the Action Men, when did Action Men start? That must have been that was the early 60s, wasn't it? Mid-60s?
I don't know. As a child, what did you want to be when you grew up?
Oh God, Paul. Something totally unrelated to what I am now, that's for sure. I wanted to be a mechanic.
Really?
My dad was an engineer.
Ah, right.
I was really into cars when I was younger.
Yeah.
I wanted to be a mechanic. Weirdly, a Formula One mechanic. I can remember saying that to my job when we had a job thing at school, at grammar. Oh, what do you want to do? And they were like shocked. What do you want to be that for? But yeah, that didn't last long. I soon got out of cars when I got into cycling. But music came to me pretty early on. I started playing bass when I was 11 years old. And pretty much when I started doing that, that's what I knew I really wanted to be a musician.
Who's your favourite band? If I had a ticket to a concert for a band
yes.
right now, what would delight you the most?
It wouldn't actually be my favourite. If we were the Beatles, surely everybody would want to go and see the Beatles, wouldn't they? Even though it's not my favourite band, and I'm not a massive fan, if someone says to me, who's the best band, it's always me, well, it's the Beatles, obviously.
So if they're not the best band, who musically are the best band? Who would be high up there?
As a pop band?
Any band?
Okay. Well, it would be a jazz band, maybe like Weather Report or something like that. Because the bass player. And do you know, the simple. I'm fluffing the question here, Paul. The simple answer is anything with good bass player. Anything with a good bass player, I like. Yeah. And there's been a few of those. The Who, rock, British Wise, the Beatles. We mentioned the Beatles, Weather Report, Motown. Motown is my big music that I love. For sure. That's coming from my mod background, which was, my being a mod when I was a teenager, and still am. Once a mod, always a mod. Motown.
So you just mentioned jazz. Are you a big jazz fan?
I am. Jazz, funk a little bit more. The band I play in is a funk band, and a lot of the guys in it are all really into jazz. And it's like, well, surely, why aren't you playing? But yeah, funk is good to dance to. It's good to listen to. But I do like the jazz, the sort of more technical side of it.
Yeah.
Well, or acid jazz, like Acid Jazz Records. I mean, I obviously know them very well. I had a couple of albums out that were assigned to them. And that's, that's not jazz really, it's more funk, but because they're titled Acid Jazz, it became,